Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Where did all the vaccine go?
We did our best.
No supply.
Why did you let people wait in line?
Anger and frustration after a pop-up clinic runs out of COVID-19 vaccine. Also,
could have done better in terms of communications. Let me acknowledge that.
Demanding answers why some people heard about Fraser Health's pop-up clinics while many didn't. And
you do not have a warrant. It's time to leave.
he turned his swanky downtown penthouse into a makeshift nightclub. Wait till you hear what the judge said as she sentenced him for breaching health orders.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Where did the vaccine go?
clinic chaos, plenty of demand for the COVID vaccine, not enough supply.
I don't know what's going on in here.
Hundreds who lined up for hours in Surrey turned away, leaving angry and unvaccinated,
We were waiting here almost 4 hours now.
still searching for a shot.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with chaos at a pop-up vaccine clinic in Surrey's Newton neighborhood.
Some lined up there for more than 4 hours and say they were told they'd get the shot, only to be turned away when the clinic ran out of vaccine.
As Isabel Regam tells us, it left people angry and confused.
There was no guarantee.
No guarantee. We did our best.
Excitement quickly turned into anger.
We were waiting. I was here at 9 o'clock. I was there, and we waited all the way here for 4 hours. What's the point of that?
Hundreds waited for hours, only to be told they wouldn't get their shot at this pop-up clinic in Newton. Did they tell you you would get it?
Yeah, their security guard especially came up to me and say, I'll guarantee you 800.
Especially they were saying we were guaranteed. They came, counted us, and they didn't even tell us right away.
You know, like we're all still waiting in line trying to get an update, but we didn't get one.
Why did you let people wait in line? Staff on site did not want to answer on camera, but maintained people were told there were no guarantees.
If they want vaccine guarantee, they can book an appointment.
But many waiting in line told the CBC that's not true.
I don't know where you come from.
A day ending in chaos actually started with a lot of positivity.
It was awesome. This is a great thing these guys are doing, Fraser Health. They are just, coming to our doorsteps, our parks.
And young folks happy the Newton site was offering Pfizer to those 18 plus.
We knew that if we didn't come now, our turn's going to be basically at the end.
I thought we'd still have to wait 2-ish months, so I was pretty glad.
But that confidence in getting a shot?
I saw a guy numbering the people and I asked him, then he said, no, don't worry about it, you will get the vaccine for sure.
Didn't last long, as dozens were told capacity had been reached.
All these people didn't go to work. They are just waiting here for 3-4 hours, and it's just a waste of time. If they think that they are running out of vaccine, they should have told people.
Today's frustration over a lack of vaccine follows another issue that's been raised over the last few days: how these pop-up clinics are communicated to the public. After today's fiasco, many are demanding answers, which they say are desperately lacking. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Surrey.
And Newton was just one of several pop-ups today. As Isabel mentioned, many are demanding answers about how the public is being told about the clinics.
Well, today the province is apologizing for what some are calling a communications fiasco. Our Tanya Fletcher is live with more. Tanya, what is the health minister saying?
Yeah, Adrienne Dix clarified these pop-up clinics in Fraser Health target 10 of the region's 40 service areas or hotspot communities. And yesterday alone, about 4,100 people were immunized there. But we asked why there was so little communication about these drop-in clinics to those they were actually geared towards. You know, many had to hear about it through social media instead of through official channels, prompting these massive crowds. Well, Dix did apologize for the poor communication and also acknowledged that images of these these long lines were somewhat unnerving. But we also asked him if this was really an equitable distribution of vaccine supply, given that many of those who need it most can't afford to simply leave work and wait in a line all day. And there were also reports of many people not in those areas, living in those areas, simply walking in and getting the vaccine regardless of where they live. So why wasn't Fraser Health upfront saying we welcome everyone from everywhere? Or why didn't they prioritize those who actually live in these hotspot neighborhoods? Dix defended the overall approach.
The program was successful in that a lot of people were immunized. Some people who weren't qualified for those clinics did get immunized, particularly in Coquitlam, but the overwhelming share of people that we were targeting to immunize were immunized. And on the communications, absolutely, we're going to be better.
And more specifically on people from other communities getting the vaccine, he says in all but one clinic, everyone who was immunized was identified by postal code.
All right, hopefully they'll get that sorted out. And Tanya, there's also some confusion around people having to register online for their second dose?
Yeah, whether you're getting your vaccine through the age-based Pfizer-Moderna program or through the AstraZeneca pharmacy rollout, you're still being told to register online. Now, Dr. Bonnie Henry first mentioned this in last Thursday's briefing, that everyone should register on the Get Vaccinated website, regardless of when, how, or where they might have received their first dose. The reasoning, it streamlines your data in one system and makes it easier for the province to notify you when your second dose comes up. Well, this has since stirred up a lot of confusion, though, with some saying their pharmacist told them they'd notify them when it's time for dose 2, so no need to do anything further. And for example, some who initially registered online for the age-based vaccine, but since then got AstraZeneca at a pharmacy, have received this text message. You can see it invites you to book your first appointment, even though you've already had it. And at the bottom it says, do not book an appointment if you've received your first dose. You will receive another notification when you are eligible to book your second dose. Well, here's what Dix had to say about all that.
In terms of that group of people who've just recently received, and it would be in the last few weeks, their AstraZeneca vaccination from a community pharmacy. We'll have more information for them, but it's in the interest of everyone to register, and I encourage everyone to do so.
Now, he adds some pharmacies have already automatically rebooked people's second appointments for them, but he says overall anyone who hasn't registered online is still urged to do so. Anita, Mike?
Tanya Fletcher live tonight. Thanks, Tanya. The number of people in hospital with COVID-19 has reached a new record high as the province reports another 841 new cases of the virus. There are 515 patients in hospital with 171 in critical care. Sadly, 5 more people have died of COVID-19. More than 34,000 people were immunized in BC yesterday. People 58 and older will be able to book their vaccine appointments starting at midnight tonight.
It has been a difficult month for a Surrey family desperately trying to return the body of a loved one to India. As John Hernandez reports, members of the community are rallying behind the family, trying to help.
He's like a brother to me.
Bimaljit Kaur Kalar comes to this Gurdwara to pray. Today she mourns the loss of her cousin who died just a few weeks ago. He was only 29.
He was a very cheerful person and also a hardworking person.
Amrinder Singh only spent a few months in Canada, but his family says he made the most of it. He left India behind with hopes of providing for his family back home.
He really wanted to give a very, very beautiful life to his daughters, his family, his wife.
Plans tragically cut short. He died on April 5th. The cause of death still unknown. His family has been trying to get his body back to India ever since.
Everything was ready. After a wait of 3 weeks, his body was finally ready to go to India on 24th April.
But just hours before the flight took off, it was cancelled, a consequence of Canada's recent ban on travel from the region.
We couldn't do anything for him. His body was already at the airport.
Now they're trying to find a new indirect flight and will have to secure all the permits again, a process that could take weeks.
It's a very hard time for the family.
Narinder Singh Walia is among the members of the Gurdwara who have lent a helping hand, coordinating with the funeral home to hopefully find an alternative.
It's our duty, actually. We have to arrange something for them. So we help the people who needs, No? So that's why actually we take this decision.
The family says they wish Canada's travel ban didn't take effect so suddenly.
They should think about the people on the ground level.
As his wife and kids wait to see their loved one for the last time. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
To a scathing sentencing in BC Provincial Court today, the judge aiming her comments at a Vancouver man who defied COVID-19 restrictions by turning his downtown penthouse into a makeshift nightclub.
She says he is no better than the drug dealers fueling our overdose crisis. Dan Burr joins us live with more on the sentencing today. Dan, the judge was quite blunt, wasn't she?
Understatement, Mike. Judge Ellen Gordon told Mohamed Movasagi he ought to count himself lucky he'll only spend just one more day behind bars, along with 18 months probation. She says if the Crown had asked for jail time, she would have imposed it. Quote, "It was a crime, not a party." Movasagi pleaded guilty to breaking a health order, breaching his bail, and keeping liquor for sale after hosting gatherings in a $3 million penthouse in defiance of a public health order. The Crown says in late January, police went in the suite around 3 in the morning with a search warrant. They found 78 people inside, shoulder to shoulder, along with a topless woman on a pole, bar, DJ booth, and menus. Officers found Movasagi hiding upstairs. Prosecutors say he asked police to, quote, give him a break, then faked collapsing on the ground. Movasagi's brother represented him in court today, saying the publicity has cost his brother work and caused great embarrassment to their parents. He also claimed the party had grown beyond what it was supposed to be. Her Honor was having none of it, telling Movasagi, if someone who had been at your party was infected and died, as far as I'm concerned, you're guilty of manslaughter. If someone who had been at your party was infected and passed it on to grandma, as far as I'm concerned, you're guilty of manslaughter. And what you did, sir, is comparable to individuals who sell fentanyl to the individuals on the street who die every day. There's no difference. You voluntarily assumed a risk that could kill people in the midst of a pandemic. She also ordered him to pay $5,000 in fines and perform 50 hours of community service. BC's public safety minister says Movasagi could lose more assets in the condo through civil forfeiture.
I think the judge's scathing words were a reflection of what most British Columbians thought about his actions and his complete disregard for the health rules in place and the safety of other people.
For his part, Movasagi apologized to the judge and the public today, saying he has since made sure to follow the Healthcare Act, quote, to a T, wear a mask, social distance. Anita, Mike.
Quite the scolding. Thanks, Dan. We are learning more tonight just how much 3 levels of government are spending to house the homeless in Vancouver. It's a lot.
More than $200 million, all committed to real estate over the last year. As Justin McElroy tells us, the new space has big implications for the Strathcona Park encampment.
An underused hotel here, a vacant property there. In the last year, all 3 levels of government have purchased a number of properties in the city of Vancouver intended to house the homeless and low-income people. And while individual purchases may not seem like a lot, when you add them all up over the past year, it's the biggest investment seen in quite some time. CBC News did crunch the numbers. Over $250 million has been spent in the last year on different properties. That's over 700 beds in total. All of them, the province and federal government and city said, going towards helping the most marginalized people. Mayor Kennedy Stewart says that he'll continue to press for even more properties to be purchased.
And of course, the only way to do this is through housing. And we continue to partner with senior governments to do this. And you'll hear even more of this in the weeks and months ahead. And as long as I'm mayor of the city, this will be a primary focus, is to sort out our housing need, and especially for those who are most vulnerable in our city.
Now, most of these properties were only finalized to purchase in the last month, and it's because there's the deadline for Strathcona Park to be removed of campers by the end of this month. The park board saying that they will now commit to enforcing any injunction and making sure that the park does not have people camping overnight, because there's enough beds in the city that can house all those people. Whether everyone is confident enough in their plan a month from now still remains to be seen, along with whether the province, federal government, and city continue to open up the checkbook to buy these properties that are needed. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, BC's former gaming minister says he never turned a blind eye to the problem of money laundering in the province.
Rich Coleman appeared before the public inquiry into suspicious cash moving through our casinos. He says he knew about concerns but trusted law enforcement to handle it.
CBC Impact Team reporter Bathe has been following this story for us. Val, this was crucial testimony.
A lot of eyes and ears were likely on what Rich Coleman had to say. For years now, he's been accused over and over of ignoring BC's money laundering problem while he was in charge of gaming, and that was on and off over a span of 10 years. Critics have alleged Coleman and the provincial government looked the other way because they wanted that casino revenue.
That's just ridiculous. There was never, ever that I saw in all the time I was government a point where somebody said, ignore a revenue stream that could be illegal for the benefit of government. That just never happen.
Coleman says when he first assumed responsibility for gaming back in 2001, money laundering wasn't considered a major issue. Loan sharks and parking lot thefts were the top concerns. But by 2008, questions were being asked about big cash transactions in casinos. Now, despite those allegations, the illegal gaming enforcement team, a 5-year pilot project, was disbanded by Coleman. He told the inquiry the team wasn't successful. It had trouble with focus. The new police hires and new prosecutors could do a better job. For the most part, Coleman echoed what his former boss, Christy Clark, told the inquiry last week, that he knew money was being laundered and that it was an issue. But as a minister, it wasn't up to him to step in and tell officials what to investigate. So he left it in the hands of the BC Lottery Corporation and its regulator. But he knew. He saw his own ministry briefings and he saw news reports. CBC reported huge amounts of dirty money was suspected in BC casino deals as early as January 2011.
The biggest challenge I learned in this job over the years is to not to assess the providence or the facts of a story just based on a media account, simply because there could be other data and information that somebody's not aware of, or they are not, or it's involved in some other larger aspect of an investigation.
Money laundering has flourished in BC for more than a decade. In 2018, almost 3 years ago, it was estimated over $100 million in illegal cash had circulated through the system. Mike, Anita?
All right, Belle, thanks very much. Belle Puri reporting tonight. Well, a sudden spike in the number of people dying from drug toxicity in Surrey has the RCMP issuing a warning tonight. In the past week, at least 6 people have died in that city alone. Police are unable to confirm if illicit drugs came from the same source, but say the deaths are linked to fentanyl and heroin. 5 of the 6 deaths happened in people's homes where they were likely by themselves. In Surrey, there have been 70 fatal overdose deaths this year, 20 so far in April.
Today is the National Day of Mourning, remembering those who lost lives or have suffered injuries on the job. And the family of one of the men who died in February in a tugboat sinking in Kitimat is calling for Transport Canada to take responsibility.
Here again, I am asking you to make it right and deliver to us the answers we so well deserve. This was 100% preventable, and Charlie, our boy, should still be with us today.
We've been screaming for years that these accidents that have been happening will lead to deaths. And when it would happen, we were going to lay the bodies at Transport Canada's door. And that is what we're metaphorically doing today.
Alongside calls for the Ingenica, that tugboat, to be recovered, there are demands for better enforcement of safety regulations and enhanced training for seafarers.
Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. Joe, on the way in, it was kind of, I'm hearing some interesting audio.
No, it sounds like a robot, but I feel like it's Wesley.
It's actually the dog.
Ah.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Well, as I was saying, yeah, it was spitting when I was coming in, if that's the right term, but it seems to have gone up a notch from that.
Yes, you are right. The spitting has gone up to sprinkles, and now we're, I'd say, full-on showers, and the dog Agrees. Let's take a look at the radar. The system is moving in fast and furious. Now, we did get by with a mainly dry Wednesday, though, but there it is. You can see the darker greens just crossing the strait, even some yellows embedded. That's the intensity of the rainfall. And we're looking at some steadier downpours through the overnight. This is all thanks to a warm front that's pushing in across the province. It's coming with some rain, that southwesterly flow, bringing the moisture in. It's also going to be bringing the temperatures in for tomorrow. Take a look at tomorrow's forecast highs. 18s, 19s, and 20s for most of Metro Vancouver. Our seasonal afternoon highs, keep in mind for this time of year, still around 15 based on our 30-year average. So it's a warm Thursday, and we'll see some sunny breaks as we get into what we call the warm pocket of the Pacific coastal system. That cold front, though, will be following suit. We're going to see that cold front by the time we hit the end of the week. Going to sweep through for Friday, but it's nice that we sort of have a bit of a rain sandwich, and the sunshine ends up tomorrow most of the day with those high teen temperatures. So get ready for a one-day hit of summer.
All right, we'll wait for more on that, along with various noises and other things coming from the back.
Never know what you're going to get here.
Okay, Joe, thanks very much. See you again in a bit. And a quick reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Crowded hospitals and no sign that the pace is set to slow. We're going to take you to Alberta next, where healthcare officials are working on a triage protocol as they prepare for the worst. Okay, thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight at 6:20. Hey, today is International Guide Dog Day.
It sure is, and to celebrate, Killeen Jones shows us a hockey-loving pup in Halifax who was just graduated to being an official guide.
Good boy. Meet Rookie and Shelly Adams. She's out for a walk with her new guide dog.
He's my third dog. I got my first dog in 2006, so it's been about almost 15 years I've had a dog by my side.
Now today is a very big day for Rookie. See that graduation cap he's wearing? He is officially graduated and passed the bar to be a guide dog. All of this was celebrated in such a 2021 way, a Zoom graduation.
We're officially graduated and we're doing really well together.
Rookie, in case you didn't know, is a bit of a star. Ottawa Senators graphic designer Mark Kelly became a volunteer puppy trainer, and Rookie sort of became part of the Senators team for the last 2 years.
Oh, he's so famous. He was raised by the senior graphic designer by the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators sponsored him, so basically they paid for his training. And he spent every day almost for like the first 2 years of his life at the arena, hanging out with the boys in the locker room, training in the gym, out on the ice. Apparently he used to sneak out on the ice sometimes.
With his hockey life behind him, paired with Shelly, he's now a superstar guide dog. Unflappable when he gets to a corner and doesn't get distracted by a neighborhood dog. Most importantly, these two bonded quickly.
It takes a while to bond with the dog because they've spent the first 2 years of their life with someone else. But dogs are very loving creatures, so it didn't take us long to bond, did it, buddy?
Meanwhile, Dan O'Brien was also on the Zoom graduation call. He's been a volunteer trainer for 2 guide dogs now, and his latest puppy, Luna, was in today's graduating class. As he takes his own dog out for a walk, he says watching Luna graduate to be a guide dog is a proud moment.
I always look at it like how you send your children off to university. You know, they're not with you forever, your kids. So dogs is just a shorter time period, and we get them all ready, we get them ready to go to school, and then we say bye-bye and go off to do your work.
And this is what Rookie was born to do, be the guide. And it's a partnership Shelly Adams loves. Killeen Jones, CBC News, Halifax.
Rookie looks like to be a great guide.
Absolutely. Fetching in the hat, too. Kind of like that. They do such a great and important work. So happy International Guide Dog Day.
Happy Guide Dog Day.
Today.
All right, that's it for this commercial break. We will be back in a few moments with more national and international news. Stick with us.
Alberta has led our country in new COVID-19 cases per capita for weeks now. Today, that province reported more than 1,800 new cases.
Pressure is already forcing hospitals in parts of the province to delay surgeries. And as Aaron Collins explains, doctors are preparing for much worse.
Alberta's hospitals are filling up as ICU cases continue to stack up. Some surgeries now being delayed just to make space. And doctors say they're being prepped to make some impossible choices.
If you're in a situation where you have 5 COVID patients who need a respirator and there's only 3 respirators, how do you choose? That's what this triage protocol is set up to do.
The Premier said weeks ago that this could happen. The government's own projections were for 20,000 active cases in Alberta, a number that's now been surpassed.
There is pressure now, and that pressure will grow over the next 2 to 3 weeks based on the current number of active cases. We as Albertans need to pull together.
Meanwhile, Albertans can still come together for a pint with friends, even as new COVID cases near record highs. Well, the government says it will consider some targeted restrictions in hotspots. So far, no sign that last call is approaching for patios in the province.
There's, I think, a false idea out there that we can just, that quote-unquote lockdowns stop viral spread and that they can be effective in every instance. That's not the case.
The Premier says the healthcare system can handle the coming strain, but some healthcare workers aren't so sure.
There is a limited number of ventilators, beds, and human resources to look after these people. And if our third wave looks like Ontario's third wave, it's going to be really scary.
You're not painting a very nice picture.
I wish I could wave my magic wand and make it all better, but I haven't found it yet.
About 1 in 10 COVID tests come back positive in Alberta these days. Some of those people will end up in crowded hospitals, ratcheting up the pressure here on the province's front line. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Children are among those getting swept up in the pandemic's third wave, but they don't always look sick, and some have died.
Has parents understandably concerned? Christine Burak is getting some suggestions on what to look for.
With the virus surging in several provinces, more children are becoming infected.
It's just scary to see how many children are being affected by the variants.
In Ontario, scientists say for the first time, 5 public health units found more than 10% of people tested had the virus. That's considered high. But in children aged 3 to 18, the numbers were even higher.
There's a lot of COVID that's kind of lurking beneath the surface that we're not even aware of.
During this pandemic, 955 Canadians under 19 have been hospitalized. 8 have died. But with variant cases rising in Nova Scotia, Sharon Beasley worries the virus might now be more dangerous for kids.
I just feel like I'm in a bit of a void, that there's really no information.
When we're seeing increased transmission in the community, we can expect to see more kids and youth with rare complications of COVID-19.
But she adds the risk of death hasn't changed. A British study comparing the effect of the variant first identified in the UK with the original virus found no evidence of more severe disease in children.
Very rarely, children might get a little sicker and might require medical attention. And what I would say to parents is there are 3 particular things I would look out for.
If a child is having difficulty breathing, refusing to eat and drink, or being unusually lethargic or unresponsive, doctors say don't hesitate. Go to your local hospital. As for when kids might be able to get vaccinated,
I expect it's going to be a little while before children make it onto the priority list because, quite frankly, they don't get as sick as adults do.
Based on medical conditions, Alberta is offering vaccine shots to kids aged 12 to 15, but wider use will depend on Health Canada approvals. Scientists in Ontario say they can't see students going back to class in this school year, but they're hoping kids can be vaccinated by September. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
India's death toll has now surpassed 200,000. It comes as more than 360,000 new COVID cases were reported today.
As Rebecca Bunton reports, preparations for vaccinations are underway, but it's already proving to be challenging.
The scenes of people struggling for air, pleading for help and breaking down in grief are becoming all too familiar. India's public health emergency is showing no signs of abating amid shortages of hospital beds, oxygen and medicine. Delhi has become the epicenter of the pandemic, and as its crematoriums are overwhelmed, there are fears that the death toll may be far higher than the official figures. The second wave of the virus has been described as hitting India like a tsunami. India's airlifting in medical supplies, and countries from around the world are coming to its aid. Vital supplies are being sent from countries including Britain, the US and Australia, including ventilators and oxygen concentrators, while Canada is sending $10 million to the Indian Red Cross. But the crisis is so deep that many fear that all this won't be enough.
Transporting oxygen is a logistical nightmare at this stage because India, there's a short supply of cryogenic tankers. We've airlifted some tankers, from Germany. So we're trying to meet that shortfall. Then, there is also a short supply of cylinders.
The country's vaccination drive is seen as one of India's best hopes to get through the pandemic. But even that is struggling. India is the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines, but parts of the country, including Mumbai, have been running out of doses. This comes as its vaccination drive is set to open up to everyone over the age of 18 as of Saturday. But citizens struggled to register online on Wednesday, with many reporting that slots were unavailable and as the app repeatedly crashed. The crisis continues and there's still no end in sight. Rebecca Bunzen for CBC News, Mumbai.
More encouraging news on the vaccination front tonight. A study out of the UK says just one dose can cut down household transmission by up to half.
Up to now, we've known that vaccination will protect you as the individual. But now we're also getting evidence that getting vaccinated will protect others around you. And this will drive down that effective reproductive number, that RT number that we always worry about, because we're trying to get that number below 1 in order to eventually get out of this pandemic.
Those involved in the study had taken one dose of either Pfizer or the AstraZeneca vaccine.
The government of Ontario has announced a program to fund paid sick days for workers in that province. Employees will be eligible for as much as $200 a day for up to 3 days through a temporary program ending in September. The provincial government will reimburse employers for the cost.
Our action today means that if a warehouse worker is told to self-isolate, she can do so without losing her paycheck. And if a grocery store clerk needs to take time off to get vaccinated, they can get paid while doing so.
Ontario is also offering to top up federal relief payments so workers could receive up to $1,000 a week. Quebec and Prince Edward Island are the only other provinces offering paid sick days. Also today, Ontario's Auditor General delivered a special report calling the province's long-term care facilities, quote, woefully unprepared for the onslaught of COVID-19. The report cites overcrowding, poor government oversight, and a severe staffing shortage as key known problems. More than 3,700 long-term care residents have died from COVID in Ontario. Well, the opening ceremony for the Tokyo Olympic Games is just 86 days away as Tokyo enters a new stage of emergency this week from surging COVID-19 cases.
Scott Russell is learning new details from organizers about how they plan to stage this massive event amid a pandemic.
The key principles involved in the playbook are testing, tracing, and isolating. Athletes and officials will be required to deliver 2 negative tests within 96 hours departing their countries, another negative test upon arrival in Japan. All visitors must have a smartphone and download 2 apps, a daily health reporting app and a contact confirming app. Athletes and officials will be subjected to regular testing at the Games, and they will live in the Olympic bubble. They will live in the athletes' village and travel only between their living quarters, training and competition venues. They will not be allowed to use public transit. They will wear masks at all times, with the exception of eating, drinking, sleeping, competing, or being interviewed. Athletes are to be interviewed in mixed zones for no longer than 90 seconds. The interviewers have to wear a mask. Athletes and officials will be eating in designated areas, accredited areas. There's no requirement that athletes are to be vaccinated in order to compete, but countries are being encouraged to vaccinate their Olympic delegations. The Australian government just yesterday mandated that their Olympic athletes will be part of a priority group to receive vaccines through a priority provider, and that begins as early as next week. There are to be no international spectators in Olympic venues, while a decision on Japanese spectators is being delayed until June. The third edition of the playbook comes out Friday, and that's for media and broadcasters. This weekend, Canada's top divers will compete at a qualifying event at the Olympic Aquatic Centre, 300 athletes from 49 countries around the world. In Toronto, I'm Scott Russell for CBC News.
You've probably seen the false information floating around the internet, from COVID denying to vaccine misinformation to miracle cures. So how do you tackle COVID misinformation? That's coming up.
The City of Vancouver has been talking about them for 2 years, and today, blue boxes for home recycling finally arrived.
The blue box? Yeah, thank you.
Most people, I think, are expecting the blue boxes and know what to do with them.
Do you know what the blue boxes are for?
No.
Have you heard about them before?
Recycling, I guess, are they? Yeah.
For the this one's for is this paper one or garbage?
If you don't know what the box is for, this brochure that comes with it will help you. It tells you to put cans, newspapers, glass, and rigid plastics into the container. And when it's full, you take it out to the curb on your regular garbage collection day, and a special truck will come by to pick up the materials. The garbage will then be sold for recycling, mainly to the US and the Orient. The blue boxes and collection trucks cost the City of Vancouver almost $3 million. It'll take $1 million a year to run the recycling program. Most of the money won't be recovered, but the city says it's worth it.
In the end, we reduce the amount of waste that enters the waste stream.
All single and two-family homes should get their blue boxes by the end of July. May Wong, CBC News, Vancouver.
$120,000 should be able to buy you a good home, but that's just below the latest median price for houses in the East End. And look at this house on East 5th Street. The lot of 25 by 100 is so small the roof literally touches the roof of the house next door. And inside there's not much more room. It's only 700 square feet, the size of an average one-bedroom apartment. But as realtor Vince DeVideo says, it may be just a house today, but a buyer might speculate on the future.
There are possibilities for rezoning, and you have to look at the nature of the area and maybe where the area is going in the future too. So I may have priced it a little less, but at that time, you have to take all factors into consideration.
The area is now zoned for single-family buildings, but he says future zoning changes could allow for an apartment building, a good buy if you're speculating. Even at these prices, houses in the East End are selling to families. This house across the street sold for $115,000, and despite high prices, sales are not slowing down.
And I think that the West End has reached its peak. In other words, it's out of reach for most people.
And because of that, Crawford says houses like this in the East End are likely to continue commanding prices of $100,000 or more. Layla Paul, CBC News, East Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The man who turned his downtown penthouse into a packed makeshift nightclub in January will spend 1 day in jail for defying COVID orders. Mohamed Movasagi's sentencing, the judge said he should count himself lucky that Crown did not ask for more time. The judge came down with strong words, saying if someone had been infected at the party and died from COVID, Movasagi would be guilty of manslaughter.
I was here at 9 o'clock, I was up there, and we waited all the way here for 4 hours.
Anger and frustration after a pop-up clinic in Surrey's Newton neighborhood ran out of COVID-19 vaccine today. Some say they waited, as you heard, 4 hours and were told they'd get a shot, but by the time they got close to the front, they were turned away.
Could have done better in terms of communications. Let me acknowledge that.
BC health officials say they could have better informed people about these pop-up clinics in Fraser Health. Along with lowering the eligibility to 30 for the AstraZeneca, many people weren't even notified about the vaccine being made available.
And during the pandemic, we've been subjected to what some call an infodemic, a torrent of information, much of it false.
But how can you tell if something is real or not when you see it on social media? Our Alex Migdal breaks down the 5 ways you can spot and stop the spread of COVID misinformation.
You might have spotted false claims like these lately on your social media pages. Even BC's top doctor has pointed it out.
There is a lot of misinformation that has been circulating out there.
Misinformation isn't new, but just like the virus, it can spread fast during a pandemic. The World Health Organization even has a term for it, infodemic. Here are some simple steps you can take to avoid falling for misinformation and spreading it. Step 1. Consider the source and check the facts.
Always question where things come from. If it's unfamiliar, a quick Google search or a conversation with someone can do a lot more to understand who's behind it.
Try to figure out who created the content. Is the source named or anonymous? What are their credentials? Next, figure out what kind of content you're reading. Is it news, an opinion piece, or satire? Or is it purely word of mouth? Have other credible outlets reported the same information? Remember, social media is often not an official source.
If you spend 5 minutes on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, you will find a lot of bad information. It's only 5 minutes. It will not take you a lot of time. And sometimes the algorithms will be useful here in sending you this kind of bad information, depending on what you consume.
Verify the timing. Consider this rumor on Twitter about a code orange signaling a mass casualty event at a major hospital. A news story matches the claim, but take a closer look at the publication date. If it's a website, check the domain name. Unusual domains like this one can be a warning sign. Step 2. Check for quality. Does the headline seem like clickbait? Are there any spelling mistakes like these? Does an image appear doctored? If so, you may be dealing with misinformation. Whenever possible, turn to official sources like the World Health Organization, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and your local health authority. Step 3. Check your biases and emotions.
I think this is a big part of misinformation, is to ask yourself, how does this make me feel? Am I scared? Am I worried? We know that emotion connects really strongly to your likelihood to share misinformation.
Does the post urge you to share? Is it promoting an opinion? Consider what the source has to gain and whether your own beliefs and feelings could be clouding your judgment. Step 4. If in doubt, don't share. More than half of Canadians have shared COVID-19 info online without knowing if it's accurate.
Even if you think it's completely humorous and funny or ridiculous, don't share it, because by simply sharing it, you are further disseminating this kind of content.
And what if you spot info you know is untrue?
I report it even when it's a family member. As a first step, that's a very easy, low confrontation option. So Twitter and Facebook all have, report functions in them.
If you're comfortable, speak up. Let the person know why their information may not be credible and help break the misinformation cycle.
A troubling sign that the pace of global warming is speeding up. Glacier melt has doubled in the last 20 years. Johanna has more on what it means just ahead.
At 6:43, a live look downtown Vancouver. Light showers in some areas right now. Will they be getting heavier for us on the coast? Well, Johanna will tell us next. Well, a new study is using millions of satellite images to get a good look at the world's glaciers. And the findings are alarming. What was once seen as permanent ice is now melting faster than ever before.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. And Joe, you've been looking at the science of this. How do our own glaciers fit into this picture?
Well, Mike and Anita, we're seeing Western North America glaciers thin faster than anywhere else in the world. And the world is really the key to this new study published today in the journal Nature. This study is being called one of the most accurate and precise and comprehensive studies of the world glaciers to date. That's over 99.9% of glaciers all over the world. That's over 217,000 glaciers were measured over a 20-year period. And this is the first study to do so using 3D satellite images. Millions of NASA satellite images were stitched together, overlaid on top of each other for every glacier in the world, and then, as one of the co-authors called it, sliced through the stack of pancakes to see how glaciers had changed over time. And we are seeing that change happen at an accelerated rate. I spoke to one of the Canadian co-authors earlier today. Take a listen to some of the big takeaways.
For the first time, we have an incredibly detailed picture of not just how glaciers are faring on the planet, but nearly every single glacier and precipitation variability. So in our case, in Western Canada, in the northern coast mountains, the St. Elias, the last decade has not been good at all for glaciers. In some cases, some of those glaciers are experiencing the highest rates of melting on the planet.
So some daunting news coming out of this study, really honing in on some of the local studies and taking away some of the uncertainties we had. But this was a collaborative process, and it's always nice to have a baseline study. Mike and Anita, the supercomputing was done at UNBC along with Hakai Institute.
I always like to think of glaciers moving very slowly, but clearly that is becoming not the case. Okay, we are slowly seeing a significant change in our forecast for the South Coast.
Yes, you're right. It was a slow process getting into these showers today. I want to take you to the current temperatures across the country. Let's start there. We're seeing some big swings, starting with summer temperatures on the way to southern Ontario and summer temperatures on the way to southern BC. We are now getting into the warm pocket that is coming with rain for us overnight, as I mentioned. The cold front is going to swing through, but not until Friday late afternoon. So we get a warm but wet Friday. It's not until the weekend that we get behind that cold front. And this cold front will just bring us back down to seasonal. So we're talking 14s and 15s for the weekend rather than 1920s. We're seeing that bump up in temperatures across the whole southern half of the province. Low to mid 20s for southern interior, the Okanagan, all the way up to the Kootenays. Seeing some clouds and showers to start, but increasing sunshine towards the afternoon. It's going to feel like a summer day. That will increase fire danger. Still relatively low across the southern half of the province, and a very wet next 24 hours for central and northern BC. But look at these numbers, 26 and through Osoyoos tomorrow, and then that cold front takes a while to cross the interior, so another warm day as we head into Friday. We were talking a lot about the weekend for the first half of the weekend. Now that we're past the midway point, I think it's fair to say this forecast is gaining confidence each day. So a very summer-like Thursday. We've got the rain back for Friday. It does look like at this point, more likely than not, that we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud for our Saturday and Sunday. It may take a little longer to clear for Saturday. It's a zonal flow, meaning west to east, so still not ruling out a stray shower, but so far, forecast models are keeping it clear. So all in all, that's not the worst April forecast, I'd say.
No, it is not. Love that zonal flow. Thanks, Joe.
I know you do. You're welcome.
Well, nearly $400 million in the federal budget is for researching ways to push emissions underground instead of into the atmosphere.
The only working example of that type of technology is in Saskatchewan. But as Evan Dyer tells us, those emissions are being forced underground for a completely different reason.
It's the world's only coal-fired power plant that captures most of the carbon it emits, Boundary Dam 3 near Estevan, Saskatchewan.
Just recently, we passed the 4 million tons captured mark.
which is significant. That's roughly equivalent to taking 1 million vehicles off the road for a year.
But Boundary Dam 3 doesn't necessarily expect to receive any of the carbon capture incentives in the new federal budget because of what it does with the carbon. It injects it underground to pump out hard-to-retrieve oil. About 80% of the carbon captured in Canada is used in a process called enhanced oil recovery.
A lot of times these are actually oil wells that are starting to taper off in their production. And what the CO2 does is it swells the oil. And so the oil has more pressure, and it creates a pressure to get that oil out of the ground.
Hardy Valiaho is glad to see carbon capture in the budget.
We were very involved with the Alberta government in pushing for it.
But the budget doesn't offer incentives if the carbon captured is used to recover oil.
If the federal government isn't supporting enhanced oil recovery, that may limit a lot of these projects from actually moving forward.
Environmentalists say oil recovery defeats the purpose of carbon capture.
You need to take into account the extra CO2 that's produced from burning the new oil. The net reduction in emissions due to the capturing of CO2 at Boundary Dam 3 is not 4 million metric tons. It's a significantly lower number.
If Sask Power didn't sell its CO2 to the oil industry, it might qualify for government support. But the money it gets for that carbon is part of what makes the carbon capture math work.
Certainly, that is an important aspect of making carbon capture economically viable as a generation option.
The budget opens a 90-day consultation period in which the industry will make the case for oil recovery and environmentalists will argue against. And in the meantime, the math will keep changing as the federal carbon price climbs year after year. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Chelsea, Quebec.
Another day, well, another duckling rescue to tell you about. This time, some elementary students were on hand for the rescue. That's coming up.
That boy, how's it going?
It's an amazing feeling, man. I mean, I have my little brother sitting in a chair here. His name's Marcus McGregor. First haircut I ever gave was actually on this guy right here. Was back in Norrie House. Had no idea what I was doing. Wasn't the best, we didn't have the best lighting. Obviously no chair. We had him sit on a cooler and some textbooks, but we made her work. I would try to practice my hair designs on him back in the day, and back in the day we thought they were awesome, but they were terrible now when I look back at them. My name is Mitch McLeod. I'm from Grand Rapids, Manitoba. I'm co-owner of Main Street Barbershop. I guess I can kind of look at myself as an entrepreneur now.
My name is Tyrone McCorster-Chokin. I'm going to be opening up my first barbershop out in Selkirk, Manitoba. It's been a long time coming. It's just something that I know that it was bound to happen at one point. My chair is going to be set right here. And then on the other side, I'm going to have one more chair. So this is going to be a 2-chair barbershop. The thought of becoming a business owner, I had the fear of failing. That was one thing that really dragged me down. Shout out to Mitch for allowing me to come cut up here and rent a chair for a day, and it's nice, man. Not once did I ever think that after I graduated high school and 4 years into being a professional barber, that I would be cutting up Winnipeg Jets to UFC fighters. It's just amazing to see where I've been.
I've cut up Madison Bowie. He won a Stanley Cup with Washington. He's actually just signed out in Vancouver. I've cut up Jack Roslovic when he was out here in Winnipeg. Andrew Harris.
Growing up, man, facing a lot of anxiety, depression, being Indigenous, man, you go through so many struggles, man, and I understand how it is being a youth growing up in a city, in a world that is not really accepting, and that really holds back with the youth from pushing forward and doing better.
Don't give up. It's tough in the beginning, but
in the end, it ends up turning out to be worth it. You gotta work every single day. It's not given to you. A lot of people think that this is given to you, but I literally work 7 days a week to try to build my clientele and get to where I'm at.
It's not work, it's art. I look at it as an art form. It's something that I look forward to doing. It's something that I don't get up Monday morning or Tuesday morning and be like, damn, I have to go do this again. It's something that I can get up and be like, I'm gonna go have fun.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is a proud returning sponsor of the 20th annual Doxa Documentary Film Festival. Get your tickets and watch amazing films from the comfort of your own home, May 6th to 16th. Learn more at doxafestival.ca. And the CBC News Vancouver team wants to see your beautiful photos of beautiful British Columbia. Email your photos to bcphotos@cbc.ca for your chance to be featured.
Well, what started out as a typical day for an elementary school teacher in Windsor, Ontario, soon turned into a rescue mission.
Yes, no kids involved. Faint quacks could be heard from a narrow drain pipe in the schoolyard.
The drain pipe was, I don't know, about 2 feet down, the length of my arm, and just a little less than the length of my arm, because I was able to get right to the bottom. When we first started, we thought there were only 4, and that was the amazing part, because after we got the first 4 out, there was like, oh, and there's another one, and here comes another one.
Yeah, the teacher managed to pull 11 tiny ducklings in distress to safety. All were immediately reunited with an extremely agitated mother duck quacking noisily nearby.
And just when they thought they'd plucked out the last one, they discovered a 12th duckling.
Wow.
It was trapped so deeply, they had to break the drain pipe and dig to finally reach it. Talk about lucky ducks.
Especially the last one.
And cute ducks, too.
Yes, this provides confirmation tonight that for regular viewers that we are your official duckling network.
Ducks, birds, chickens.
We've got it all covered.
We like them.
Count on us, night in, night out.
I'm not complaining about it. I love it.
No, I know you like birds. That's good. Okay, that's it for us. Just a reminder, you can always watch our newscasts online anytime at cbc.ca/BC.
Dan Burrett is here at 11 after the National with your next local news. Good night.
Bye.